both of them going. Okay, and then welcome again. We were just talking about our website, and George keeps reminding me to get a sign up here, which Joan hasn't gotten yet. So the website is anyhow hiddenmeanings.com, and you know, it's pretty exciting because I was just sharing with the folks here that we now have over 300,000 people, visitors. 300, in fact, today as I left, it was close to 301,000, 300,780 something. And if it accelerates any quicker than it is now, and we could, you know, anticipate 500,000. You know, remember that day we said, "Boy, if we can only reach 10,000, wow, that would really be something." Well, you know, so it's hiddenmeanings.com. And if you're in Ocean County, we're on Route 9 in Forked River, New Jersey, at the Village Green Shopping Center, and we start Sunday at 7 p.m. Well, you know, for years that we've been together, and some folks have hung in, you know, I mean, many have flowed off into that abyss somewhere, wherever they are, good luck. But, you know, a few have managed to hang in there. But we've been talking about a lot of strange things over these many years. Cosmic discoveries, biblical predictions, Buddha, the Bhagavad Gita, Muhammad, all of this stuff. And, you know, all of these books and writings that come from ancient times spoke of a great change, a time of shaking that would act really as a kind of a course correction. You know, remember when we watched the NASA liftoffs from Florida, and if the rocket is maybe a little off course, they'll fire a retro or something and change its course just a little bit because it's going in the wrong direction. And basically, the Bible and some of these ancient documents talked, maybe not literally, but symbolically about the same thing. And then, of course, as we talked here, people would more or less stare in utter disbelief, or just leave, you know, and tell me how wonderful it was. Of course, you'd never see them again. And but others would come forward and ask, and they'd say, when do you think this change will come? When do you think these things will happen? We talk about light beings. When do you think light beings will arrive on the earth? And I can say, really without any fear of error, and I feel so confident, that the light beings have touched down on planet Earth, as well as other dwelling places throughout the universe. And the great change is underway. Now, we've been discussing over the last few weeks the impact on life and the impact on nature, and especially cosmic nature, of Uranus. And we talked about the electromagnetic force that emanates from this planet Uranus, you know, what it does, and how we've also discussed in the past the understanding of ourselves as light beings and not bodies, but actually what, you know, religion calls spirit, what the Bible itself says light, but consciousness inside of these bodies that operate them. So when we talk about ourselves as electromagnetic, Uranus as electromagnetic, then once we can ever step just above our normal everyday appreciation of the physical and start to just gently understand this, we come away with a whole new approach, a whole new way of thinking. Now, many people, if we talk about Uranus and its effect on the Earth, many people will turn away from that And they'll say, well, that's astrology, and we're not allowed to talk about astrology. But the fact that Uranus pours erratic electromagnetism out into the cosmos is not astrology. It's science, and it's scientific fact. Uranus is on a 60-degree tilt. And I was reading, trying to study it more on it, and I was reading in the encyclopedia where it said, and this is interesting, that they believe what happened is that when Uranus was coming into form, it was hit by another heavenly celestial body, which caused it to go on this tilt. See? Now, of course, the Bible, not the Bible, but mythology would attribute it to Kronos and his sickle, but it's another story. But anyhow, Uranus is tilted, and so then the electromagnetic field that it produces is how can we, maybe like a thrashing tail of a crocodile, if you've ever seen that. The problem that we, as a culture on Earth, have in understanding what is happening now around us and all over the world is the fact that we've never understood how to deal with mythology. I was watching Joseph Campbell for a while tonight with Bill Moyers. I haven't seen that in a long time. Well, if we could ever get to realize that mythology is a coded scientific message written in adventure form and allowed to sit until civilization evolved to a point of understanding, then we could open these books now and reveal tremendous things that would be applicable to our lives now. But we've never, the overwhelming majority of people would look and they'll say, oh, that's a myth, meaning it didn't happen, not knowing that a myth is something that does happen. Not something that did or did not, but something that does happen. Because it's talking about the body, the mind, and nature, the universe, and how the two interact. See, that's what mythology is. The stories, here we get to the point where, okay, I can't prove this, but the stories are not written by Earth people. I know it's called Greek mythology, but in reality, the origins of these stories are from an elevated and invisible intelligence. An intelligence far beyond where intellectualism was at the time these stories were revealed. So the purpose of the stories, and this goes to the Bible, it goes to the Bhagavad Gita, it goes to the Sutras and the Vedas, all of these different stories, and it goes to the Quran. And ask a Sufi Muslim about that. But the purpose of these stories is to reveal to you the workings of the universe and the workings of the mind. But they can only be understood as civilization evolves. Because if the stories are talking in a coded language about atoms and electrons, the civilization has to evolve to the point where they can grasp and understand things like that. So as we mature as a civilization, we come to the point where you can actually, and very simply, you don't have to be a genius to do this, you can break the code of the story. And then at the same time, you come away with the knowledge that, hey, what I just read was written by someone other than a resident of the earth, someone who had to come from someplace else, because what is revealed in the story is of an advanced scientific nature, something far, far beyond what could have been known at that time. So the Bible that we read, the Holy Bible, and the Bible studies and so forth, and if you get to the point of how many people have actually studied the Bible, it's very, very few. I know they have Bible studies every night or every Wednesday, whatever. Very, very, very few, because very few people have reached the point of understanding the Bible as Greek mythology. The Bible is Greek mythology from cover to cover, coming through the Hellenistic Greeks, so, Jewish culture in Greece and so forth and so on. The stories in the Bible never happened. But if we come to a point of accepting that, and that's hard, because most people in religion and in church groups today are really not as concerned about what the stories mean as proving that they happened, something that you can't do. But these stories never happened. But once we can accept the fact that they didn't, and they were written for a totally different purpose, an extremely important purpose, then not only are we reconnected to our place of origin in this universe, in the celestial kingdom of light, but in addition, in the physical body realm, we then get an idea of what in the world is going on here. What is it? Why do I feel this way? Why are people acting this way? Now, we have on the planet Earth 12 months, January, February, so forth. But there are also 12 months in the cosmos. Now, nobody in religion has any problem with January, February, March. But they have a tremendous problem with Gemini and Aquarius and Pisces. Oh, you can't do, oh my God. But those are the 12 months up there, which then, it's like a macrocosm. You go out from the 12 months here, which only involve the Earth, then you go for the 12 months up there, and it's a big, big thing. Each month is not 30 days. Each month is 2,600 years, say. On the Earth, January and February are accompanied by cold and snow and ice. In the cosmos, Aquarius, a month, is accompanied by Uranus. The seasons change on the Earth. We know that. The seasons change in the cosmos. And we've got to reach a point of not being afraid of that. And we've got to reach a point of saying, yeah, there's a structure up there, too, that is just as important as the seasons here, so are the seasons up there. So let's take a real quick look again at the sky god, heaven, Uranus. And we've shown this picture throughout. It's an overhead 659. And this is the picture of Uranus. Okay. And, it's a bluish green planet. And what's interesting for those of you who get into the chakras and the kundalini and the comparison is what's inside is what's outside, Uranus is the 7th planet from the sun. 7th chakra. Okay? All right. Now, that's Uranus, and that's the sky god. Now, I call the king of heaven, and I call Uranus the king of heaven because, as we know, the scriptures are written in Greek. And in Greek, this is the word Uranos, which when translated into English means heaven. So this is the kingdom of heaven. You're looking at it. Okay? Now, being mature people, we begin to understand, well, what does that mean? And our grasp on all this would be, how could Uranus change all of these things on Earth? And why would Uranus change all of these things on Earth? You can take that off. Now, I've told you about the myth, and we won't dwell on it, but the myth of Uranus is Uranus, the bridegroom, married to the female Gaia, who is Mother Earth. And they had children, and some of the children were called Furies. And I'm sure you've run into some of their relatives right on, and some of the children were called Cyclops, which is the single eye. So what we have references to spiritual things, Cyclops, single eye, pineal gland, and references to some of the things that we see going on in the world, we've always seen going on in the world, and that is the exceptional tendency towards violence on the planet. Well, long story, Kronos comes along, who is another one of the children, Father Time, that you see every New Year's Eve with his sickle and his long robe, you know. And Gaia says, you know, you got to get rid of your fathers. It's too much for me. And so Kronos takes his sickle and castrates Uranus. Well, okay, story now. But what is said here is absolute truth, because Kronos means time. And what the point is that the only thing that can cause Uranus to separate from Gaia and causing all of these changes, the chaos and the spirituality at the same time, is time. In a period of time, the two will then again change positions, and Uranus will not affect the Earth as it is now. So that's what it's talking about with Kronos castrating. It says that he cuts away the bond between Uranus and the Earth. It means time does that. And it's absolutely true. So you see how the story, once you understand it, is absolutely true. Uranus marries Gaia. They have all these kids. Some of these kids are Furies. Some of these kids are Cyclops. And then Kronos, another one of the kids, comes along, does the cutting, separating the two, and that's the story. And it's a true story. But we hear now, Uranus, the bridegroom, has returned for his bride. And you got to keep this in mind. The last time that Uranus and his bride were having at it, there was dinosaurs, I would assume. I mean, you got to take 2,600 years times 12. How many years? 300,000 years ago, whatever? So this is the first time. Now you're into a scientific society, would you say? And this is happening. Oh. And so you see here how the myth is a scientific principle, a scientific story. It's absolutely true. You understand it. This is the same thing you should be getting out of the Bible and understanding the Bible in the same way. So here we are witnessing violent furies, things going on at the earth. I mean, we witnessed in front of our own eyes on television the great symbol of wealth and power, the World Trade Center, come down right in front of our eyes in the space of an hour. And now we're watching as we see all of this conflict that has gone on since, and big people in high places caught lying about wars and so forth. Now, let me just show you something here, and try with me to elevate your looking at this, not at the literal point, but try to understand this in the context of the symbolisms that is written here. Okay, this is again mythology. Matthew 4:17. Jesus says, repent. That means change the way you're thinking because the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Let's change it. Look, you better start thinking in a different direction because the kingdom of Uranus is at hand. In other words, a whole lot of shaking going on, as Jerry Lee Lewis would say. So you better approach this from a different way because things are going to change. And here it says, swear not at all, neither by Uranus, for it is God's throne. This doesn't mean that there's the man with, that we all go to church about is sitting up on this planet. There's nothing sitting up on that planet. But what it means, it's God's throne, is that it is a power and energy of nature that affects all of us, all living things. It is the highest point that actually has an impact, a tremendous impact on the way we live and the way we are. In Matthew 6:9, let's go together, let's pray. Our Father, who art in Uranus. Why not? That's exactly the way it is in Greek. Our Father, who art in Uranus. And as you go, preach saying the kingdom of Uranus is at hand. And that's what we're doing here tonight. That's exactly what we're doing. We're in compliance with Matthew 10:7 because we're shouting from the rooftops, the kingdom of Uranus is at hand. And for those that enter into meditation and sit and listen, and as we share these things together, Jesus said, because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of Uranus, but to them it's not given. And you could count on your fingers the number of people that would understand that and understand what's going on. But you see that it is. Now, let's look at some of the things. What Uranus does, okay, by its erratic nature, the erratic nature of its electromagnetic fields, it takes everything and shakes it and turns it upside down. Things that you couldn't even conceive of are shaken down. Well, World Trade Center is a perfect example. Just as presidents and kings and all of these warriors are going through the same shaking in the matters of wars and lies and cover-ups, the bridegroom has grabbed the highest places in religion by the neck and is shaking them. Now, I told you, we went a few months ago about this religious child abuse. And I told you, I said, this is not pedophilia, this is tradition. And it comes out of the ancient Greek myth of Ganymede. But let me show you this. This is from CBS, Columbia Broadcasting System. Sex crimes cover up by the Vatican. I mean, now, for decades, priests in this country abused children in parish after parish while their superiors covered it up. Now it turns out the orders for this cover-up were written in Rome at the highest levels of the Vatican. CBS News. Please. CBS News correspondent Vince Gonzalez has uncovered a church document kept secret for 40 years. The confidential Vatican document obtained by CBS News lays out a church policy that calls for absolute secrecy when it comes to sexual abuse by priests. Anyone who speaks out is thrown out of the church. The policy was written in 1962. We're not putting it in writing, but I mean, you know what the policy was. This document, once stored in the secret archives of the Vatican, focuses on crimes initiated as part of the confessional relationship, and it calls the worst crime sexual assault committed by a priest or attempted with use of either sex or brute animals. Bishops are instructed to pursue these cases in the most secretive way, restrained by a perpetual silence, and everyone, including the alleged victim, is to observe the strictest secret, which is commonly regarded as a secret of the Holy Office under the penalty of excommunication. So you can't even blame Cardinal Law in Boston. It's not his fault. He's following orders. Just doing what they always have done. Right? And Larry Diven, a lawyer who represents the victim, said this document is significant because it's a blueprint for deception. And he says the church engaged in a crime, racketeering. It's an instructional manual on how to deceive and to protect pedophiles and to avoid the truth from coming out. And of course, we know that went on. So, let me ask you, sit here. We're talking about the kingdom of Uranus is at hand. And what did Jesus say? You better change your ways. You better change the way you think about things. You better change the people that you follow, because a whole lot of shaking going on. And this one takes it right up to the top. CBS News. Sometimes the people will even think, oh, I don't know if you should say that. What are we talking about here? In Boston, they're saying over 1,000 kids. 1,000 children. And we're not supposed to, you can't say anything. Might offend somebody. Please, my goodness gracious. And so here then, something has happened that no one could even dream would happen to the church. We're talking about covering up sexual molestation of children that goes to the highest points. And as I said, you know where this originated. This isn't something that comes from homosexuals or gays, whatever they're called. This comes from tradition. This comes from the person who says, I take an oath of celibacy. I will not touch a woman. That does not include the boys. The ancient myth was the handsome young boy who was abducted by God to be a servant to the gods and did such a good job he wound up being the constellation Aquarius. To take young boys for these things in ancient Rome and Greece was quite all right, especially when you took that oath of celibacy. And remember what Jesus said in the Bible when he said the kingdom of Uranus is at hand. He says, nothing that is secret will not be uncovered. He says, so don't be afraid of anybody, because when this comes out, and it is, between the president shaken because of what's going on with him and all the weapons of mass destruction, Saddam hiding out with a gray beard on, Osama, God knows where, in a cave somewhere, and Tony Blair dancing around because the guy who told him the paper about all this is committing suicide. Look at the lunacy. What is being exposed? Here's the picture. If you go to overhead 673, and you'll see the picture. It's a beautiful drawing, but there's the picture of Ganymede being taken off by God, who comes down disguised as an eagle to carry him off to heaven and wherever, and all this stuff goes on. But here's the important part about this. The important part about this, well, you could take that down. The things of tradition, okay? I mean, our traditions, our family traditions, our religious traditions, our government traditions, which are basic evils, are being brought out into the open. I'm not talking about nice things of our traditional culture being, I'm talking about basic evils which are hidden behind closed doors. Whether it has to do with touching a child or whether it has to do with dropping bombs under false pretenses. People are in shock because for hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years, religious people have kept this a secret. And so they come in, they bow their head, they cover their head, they go on their knees to a group whose policy was to keep sexual contact with little children a dark secret. That's what Uranus can do. That's what Aquarius can do. So you can see what's coming. You know, if I was to say to you some years ago when we talked about this is what's going to happen. Oh, please, it's ridiculous. It happened. That's the only way you can fulfill these things. They happen. And then all you can do is just sit there and stare. They happen. Turning up things upside down, Albert. Get this one. Couldn't happen. Never would happen. Oh, the Episcopal Church just ordained a gay bishop. A gay bishop. That's perfectly wonderful. But I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about this is something that cannot happen. And the very next day, the same church agreed that they would start blessing unions between gays. Here comes the bride. I think it's great. I have a couple here. Let's go on and get on with it. I could care less. The point is, it's not that. It's what happened to our traditional values. Huh? This guy's coming back for his bridegroom, and he's ticked off from what happened the last time. Now, in addition to this about the Episcopal Church, what's going on in Canada? Oh, Canada, my Canada, la da da. You know what Canada's doing? Canada is about to pass a law legalizing gay marriages all over the country, which is upsetting George and the religious right. I mean, they're going crazy. People used to go to Canada to get away from the war. Now they're going to go up to Canada. Hey, come on, Rod. Come on, Bruce. Let's go get married. That's what's going to happen. Now, this I thought was great. We went to war in Iraq because we said they had weapons of mass destruction. Well, they're going to find weapons of mass destruction because they're going to plant them. And they're over there. Anyhow, forget about that. But they said they had weapons. They're looking all over the place for weapons of mass destruction. They're looking over everything. They're looking in people's houses, all over the place for weapons of mass destruction. This is great. Watch this one. Overhead 674. This is great. Associated Press. Judge rejects request to stop chemical weapons incineration. A federal judge cleared the way Friday for the Army to begin incinerating chemical weapons at a military facility in Alabama. Okay? Rejecting claims that the process will endanger nearby residents. The judge said that it's just purely speculative that people are going to get sick from this. See? The incinerator, located 50 miles east of Birmingham, is the first in a populated area. 35,000 people live there, and the Army plans to destroy 2,252 tons of nerve and mustard gas. And they're looking for weapons of mass destruction over there. Please. Okay? Now, is this a little bit foggy or is that? Okay. They asked, the chemical weapons group asked, and blah, blah, blah. The burning was begin Wednesday, all right? 19,000 people who live near the depot have yet to pick up their protective hoods, their air filters, and other gear.
Or something that isn't going to hurt them.
Right, okay? In case of an accidental release of nerve agents. And officials are installing safety equipment at some schools. And the Army plans to evacuate 3,000 people who work at the depot during the chemical release rather than issuing them safety equipment. You know? Craig Williams, executive director of the Chemical Weapons Working Group, called the idea of evacuating so many workers totally insane. So the government said, so here's this government that goes to war for mass destruction weapons, can't find any that Saddam had, and here they are giving hoods to people in Alabama when they got thousands of tons of mustard gas that they're going to get rid of. Wild stuff, you know, and stuff. So, what does the Bible say about this? You know what the Bible says about this and what Jesus said about this? Don't be worried about the speck in that guy's eye. Worry about the log in your own. You want to find weapons of mass destruction? They got more here than you'd have it probably in the universe. And so looking, you can take it down, from a physical reality standpoint, the world appears to be in a mess. But in actuality, everything you've ever hoped for has started to happen. The shaking is taking place. The cleaning has begun. You know, remember what we said some time ago? We talked about this. The room looks a lot nicer when the dirt is swept out. But it's not nice for the dirt. The dirt gets ticked off. See? That's the job of Uranus and Aquarius. So you have to put this into perspective how nature works. Not in belief, not in faith, but in what you experience and what you see and what you feel. And this is not God saying, you know, they got chemical weapons, we got to do something, or, you know, they're all fighting with each other, they're that's nothing. This is simply a cyclical thing that happens normally, just like snow comes in February. Uranus comes in Aquarius. Same thing. But it has a job to do. Look, and I told Al and Ethel, they have my greenhouse in Barnegat. They would probably know, but I mean, I believe that if you have like trees or bushes, you prune them to get them to grow better. You have to take away from them some things that might inhibit their growth, and so they can grow. In other words, you have to, you know, pull some things off. That's exactly what this is about. It's exactly the way nature works with everything. I mean, fires start in forests to thin out the forest. It's a natural thing. See? Well, you know, we're just bodies. The only difference between our body and, a kangaroo or a dog is the consciousness inside of it. The body's just the same thing. It just does stuff. But it's the consciousness inside of it. So there are many things that nature does to correct the course of creation, and it goes on periodically. And the things that are impeding the course of nature are shaken and removed. So this shaking happens to everybody. It happens to good, happens to bad, happens to dogs and cats, happens to us, happens to trees. But when it happens to people that are doing things behind the scenes, then it really, like the church and the governments, it really just it shakes everything down, because people, the way they think and the way they react to all of these things is totally different during this Uranus time. So let's consider 2 points about this. Why we personally feel the way we do. Why do you feel the way you do? Well, when you look around and you see the confusion, and you see the chaos, and you think of the Cyclops, you think of the Furies, and all of this stuff going on, remember, the world condition is a mirror of your head. Inside of here is your own world. Inside of here, your own chaos. Inside of here, your own fury. Inside of here, your own confusion and your single eye. It's all packed inside of you. And so what's going on and shaking everything outside is in the same way shaking you inside. But let's see how it happens and why it happens. How does Uranus and do the course correction? How does nature change things with the way we think and the way we act? It's done through electromagnetism. The Bible calls it light, and it is, but it's invisible light. It affects every living thing. And angles with which that light touches us results in changes. But how? How does this happen? Here's something that should help. And this was really a good discovery. In fact, this came to me from somebody in California. And it's so good because people spot stuff. This comes from Dr. Susan Pocket of the University Science News. And I was particularly happy to find this article because it backs up what we've been saying here for a long, long time. Overhead 675, if you look at this. And look what the headline is. Our conscious mind could be an electromagnetic field. All right? Is that interesting? Are our thoughts made of the distributed kind of electromagnetic field that permeates space and carries the broadcast signals to TV or radio? Professor John Joe McFadden, School of Biomedical and Life Sciences at the University of Surrey in the United Kingdom, believes our conscious mind could be an electromagnetic field. Now this puts the whole concept of astrology in a totally different way, doesn't it? Because if we are an electromagnetic field and the influences from space are electromagnetic fields, then the two would certainly complement one another. There would certainly, how can you not say then that astrologically, from a scientific standpoint, there's an effect if we are the same in our consciousness as the consciousness up there? It's all electromagnetism. So, how the various positions of celestial bodies in the universe affect the electromagnetic field throughout the universe. The theory solves many previously intractable problems of consciousness and could have profound implications on the concepts of mind, free will, spirituality, artificial intelligence, and life and death. And you know the profound significance it would have on death? It can't be. It can't happen. If we're an electromagnetic field, which we are, electromagnetic field can't die. It goes on. And the consciousness that we are in the electromagnetic field seeks into the body. Most people consider mind to be all the conscious things we're aware of, but actions such as walking, changing, and so forth can become as automatic as breathing. The biggest puzzle in neuroscience is how the brain activity that we're aware of, consciousness, differs from the brain activity driving all those unconscious things. When we see an object, now let's just say what we're talking about here. You know, I see something, oh, you know, I see it. No, you don't. Look, when we see an object, signals from our retina, the eye, travel along nerves as waves of electrically charged ions. They reach the nerve terminus, the signal jumps to the next nerve, and the receiving nerve decides whether or not it will fire, based on the number of firing votes it receives from its upstream nerves. In this way, electrical signals are processed in our brain before transmitted to the body. But where in all this is consciousness? Science can find no religion or structure in the brain that specializes in conscious thinking. Consciousness remains a mystery. Huh? Consciousness is what makes us human, see? How often have we said that? Remember we said, what? Light plus body equals human being. Light plus body equals dog. Light plus body equals cat. I mean, consciousness has to go into the body. Language, creativity, and go on to the next one, spirituality and all those things, see? Keep in mind that this goes right to the heart of what people refer to as spirit or spirituality, right to the heart of it. It's an invisible something that directly works in the mind-brain of living things. One of the fundamental questions of consciousness can be explained by looking at a tree. Most people will ask how many leaves they see, and it's thousands of leaves. But neurobiology tells us that the information, all the leaves, is dissected, scattered among millions of neurons. But science is trying to explain where in the brain all those leaves are stuck together to form the conscious. How does our brain bind information to generate consciousness? Okay? How does this happen? Well, McFadden realized that every time a nerve fires, the electrical activity sends a signal to the brain's electromagnetic field. But unlike solitary nerves, the brain's electromagnetic field is bound together with other signals. The brain's electromagnetic field does the binding, and that is the characteristic of consciousness. Dr. McFadden and Sue Pocket have proposed the brain's electromagnetic field is consciousness. Okay? So the electromagnetic field is not just an information, it can influence our... Now this, listen very carefully, I know this gets... The electromagnetic field influences our actions, pushing some neurons towards firing and others away from firing. This is the physical manifestation of conscious will. In other words, we get an idea by what we see. I'm going to hit this, okay? But before I can hit it, the electromagnetism in me, which is really me, has to decide whether I'm going. That hand and arm can't decide. There is electromagnetism in right there, right now, and I will decide whether I'm going to hit that or not. Okay? And I decided not to. And I changed my mind when I decided to. But you see what I'm saying to you? Do you see what this is the most spectacular stuff that they're talking about here? The theory explains the peculiar features of consciousness in the learning process. And then it says here, the neural networks, like in driving a car the first time, we'd expect to find nerves in the undecided state. When a small, look at this, when you're going to decide to do something, a small nudge from the electromagnetic field can topple these things, neurons, towards doing something or away from doing something. It is the electromagnetic field fine-tunes the pathway towards the desired goal. See, so the intelligence and the consciousness is in the electromagnetic field. This is the most sensational thing. Okay? This, don't even bother anymore questioning this stuff. Because what these people have found is just spectacular. What does it say in the Bible? God is light. That means God is electromagnetism. What does it say in the Bible? You are the light of the world. You are electromagnetism. And what does it say in the Bible about this electromagnetism? And I just forgot what I was going to say. It said, but it says something good. You can take my word for it. But I'm just so excited about this. Because, I was really on a roll here, too. And the bottom of it, my electromagnetic field just got unmagneted. That's all right. That's all right. You know where I'm coming from. You know where I'm coming. This is simply saying that it is the electromagnetic field inside of us that makes the decisions. Let's go on to 677 real quick. Okay? Now, one of the objections to an electromagnetic field theory of consciousness is why don't we pass out when we walk under electric cable or something? The answer is that our skin, skull, and cerebral spinal fluid shield us from the external electro fields. The conscious electromagnetic information field is a theory. But if true, there are many fascinating implications for the concept of free will, the nature of creativity, the nature of spirituality. There is no spirituality. Spirituality is electromagnetism. Consciousness in animals. The significance of life and death. The theory explains why conscious actions feel so different from unconscious. It is because they plug into the vast pool of information held in the electromagnetic field. And it talks, and now this is the part that I want you to see. This is really good. This is the University of Surrey, is one of the United Kingdom's leading professional scientific and technological universities with a world-class research file, blah, blah, blah. But this is the paper that this Dr. McFadden wrote. The paper is called Synchronous Firing and Its Influence on the Brains. What kind of firing? Synchronous. Synchronicity. In other words, firing that has a purpose. Not just firing because it fires, firing because somebody wanted it to fire. Synchronous firing. And we want to really save this and refer back to it because this is everything we're talking about. You are an electromagnetic field. God is an electromagnetic field. Bodies we use to physically experience senses, etc. And so it's really, a tremendous thing, synchronous. And it's so if there's a need for something to happen in you or in the world, in the nation, the power that we call God or angels affects the electromagnetic field with its greater electromagnetic. In other words, if we are an electromagnetic field like this, and God is an electromagnetic field and that, when the two then activate and come together with one another, things change. That's why Uranus is such an important thing for you to understand. So you see how the affairs of people and nations and religions, which are all made, remember, every pope, every priest, every president, every king, every rabbi, every soldier, every general is an electromagnetic field. And also remember, Eta Carina is an electromagnetic field. Supernova 1987A is an electromagnetic field. And you know how, you can tell how this is felt by the physical brain. So we see all these strange happenings in governments, in religions, and in living things, and in ourselves, and we know basically how it happened. Because we are electromagnetism, Uranus is electromagnetism, and then when Uranus starts wagging his tail like a wild crocodile, things are going to happen. And as we saw in the church, in the Vatican, and in the White House, and in Saddam, and all of these things, things are happening, and it's just beginning. But why? We know how now, don't you? I think you know how. But why? There's a book I'm going to recommend to you. I'm not an astrologer. I can't vouch for what the author says. But on the other hand, what we are seeing gives credibility to this book, and it's one of the most intelligent ones I've ever seen written on the subject. When I read something, I try to determine what's being said. I digest what's being said. Then I consider, how do I feel about it? How I know you feel? What I see around me. Now we're trying to determine why a higher form of electromagnetism, a higher form of light, will change things from Uranus. So I'm going to recommend a book to you, and it's called Uranus, Freedom from the Known, and it's written by Jeff Green. Well, you know, you can say it. I don't really have time now because we're running out of time. Oh, you do? Write it down. Write it down. For 45 years I've been writing it down. Woman says write it down, you write it down. Uranus, freedom from the known, Jeff Green. Okay? It's a small book. But you know what it'll do? It'll tell you why you feel the way you do. You, specifically, it'll tell you. How does this interact with you? And then you decide. Is he right? Is that me? The book gives what I believe are logical explanations as to why Uranus does what it does. And how it affects countries, how it affects all of us and cultures all over the world. How it affects your health, how it affects your nervous system, your emotions. Jeff Green says that Uranus relates to individuation. It relates to you pulling out of the crowd, you pulling out of religion, you pulling out of government, you citing, liberation, freedom, and then he says the most important thing that Uranus does to you, if you'll allow it, and the word is deconditioning. It takes all of that brainwashing, which we've all undergone all of our lives, and deconditions us from it. Now he says deconditioning. From what? Remember we talked earlier, you have to periodically prune the tree branches so the parts that hinder life, that hinder its health, that hinder its growth are gone. So what has to be pruned from us? Our conditioning. We're not violent people. We're not molesters. We're not people that like to shoot people or bomb people. We don't hate people that live in Iraq or people that live in Afghanistan or God knows. But somehow or other we are conditioned to follow the mob, follow the guy with the gun, follow the ones with the flag, regardless of whether they're right or wrong, wherever they are. Follow the one who is the religious leader. We got to follow him. We can't ask any questions. Just follow him. And here Jeff Green is saying, which is true, Uranus, the bridegroom, comes back and provides deconditioning. And it throws everything in chaos. Because a guy who has followed the Queen and the Prime Minister of England for all these years is a nuclear scientist, suddenly in his head comes, I can't deal with this. He runs to the BBC and he says, this thing with the weapons, it's a lot of crap. And then he is put in to the camera and the guy has to go out and kill himself. They say he killed himself, but now did you hear the latest about this guy? He's supposed to have slit his wrist. They found him, and he's got all these electrodes attached to his chest from a cardiogram. Who knows? But that's what we have been taught and had drummed into our heads as our tradition. We've been taught by fallen angels, angles of light, mothers and fathers, other electromagnetic fields who occupied bodies and were conditioned themselves. And these are conditioning patterns of religion, of government, your family, your friends. It gets to the point where your sense of identity is totally lost. You don't even know. You never knew that you were electromagnets. You never knew that God was electromagnet. You want to be a body. Huh? You want to be a Christian. You want to be an American. And you're none of that. You're electromagnetism. That means you're everything. You're eternal. And so what Uranus says is stop following these crazy people and start turning yourself back to the true origin of your life, to the true family. Governments are lying, bombs are falling, religions are lying about their impurities, homosexuals are being made bishops. Things that explode. Yeah, it's okay. Everything's okay. I'm not saying it's not okay. It's wonderful. I mean, I think it's true. I'd like to have the homosexual bishop come here and have a speech. You're invited anytime you want. But Uranus shatters and it revolutionizes. And this is what Jeff Green says. If you shatter all the conditioning that defines your sense of personality and identity, then you'll finally arrive at your essential nature, who you are. In other words, you return to your identity as a creation of God in light, in the image and likeness of the supreme light, and not in the image and likeness of those who do such violence to the earth. It's exactly what we've been talking about. And so this tremendous wave of electromagnetism coming from Uranus, coming from Aquarius, coming from Eta Carina and supernova, coming from the hourglass, comes rushing to the shore of what is planet Earth. And so you can take your meditative surfboard and leap upon the crest of this wave and have a wonderful ride through all of this, or you can turn your back on it. But just like in the ocean, when the big wave comes and you turn your back on it, it can smash you and put your face in the sand. And you know what Jeff Green says about why so many people turn their back? Jeff Green says the impulse is resisted by many because to respond to it would simultaneously create individual and social insecurity. I don't have the mob anymore. But you know what do we always say? What is my favorite commercial? 20,000 penguins jump off of a cliff. One little penguin says, no, I'm not think so, and aha, he's my hero. So now the bridegroom has returned for the bride. Uranus is shaking the world. And all you have to do to prove that I'm right is turn on the news. The question is no longer how or why. We've gone through that. The question is you. Will you come to the force? And will you allow the deconditioning process? Will you turn your back on them, or will you turn your back on the sky god, the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of Uranus? And if you do, if you turn your back, then you'll go down fighting with your flag and your earthly ruler. But it's not necessary. For the sake of you, your family, and for the sake of the entire planet Earth. I hope you choose otherwise. And that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Bye-bye.
I think that'll connect with some more people out there. I really do.
I hope so. Well, I want to put this new page up pretty soon. I'm very excited about the internet. Okay, it's Sunday night, and here at the old church camp.
Go back and look a couple 10 minutes. You said something about spirit and this. How did you connect it together again?
Okay. Here's what we learn, okay? We'll call electromagnetism EM. Okay. Electromagnetism is consciousness. So it is us. Don't try to picture it. I mean, think of it in the same way as when you go to bed and when you think you're dreaming. All of that adventure you have is done in the realm of electromagnetism. You feel, you experience, you're with people, you have all of these adventures, and yet there's nothing physical there at all. Doesn't have to be, okay? Consciousness. Spirit is an invisible force inside of us. That's as we've been always raised to understand. Spirit is an invisible force inside of us. In other words, he has a great spirit. I mean, I'm given to be, I'm wired. I have a tremendous spirit. or I can feel the Spirit in here. Something inside of me is propelling me. And so we have this invisible thing inside of us called spirit, which can't be measured, can't be felt, can't be seen. It doesn't exist. But if we take that same premise and come over here and say, what this spirit thing really is electromagnetism, then we can measure it. We can feel it. You know, it becomes real. It's a reality. This you have to have faith for.